Since yesterday, a mix of good and poor things has happened. I would say that yesterday, for the most part, was very, very good. It was the last of my days at the job until next time. And, and, uh, sorry, there's a cat sitting on my neck again. There you go. Move over so I can talk. There we go. Thank you. No, no, move your paw. Move your paw. There you go. Okay, there you go. You could sleep next to me like that, but keep right there, off the neck. All right. I love you too. But mix of so the day at work was good. It was busy. It was even busier than Valentine's Day. Well, yeah, I would say like overall more strenuous and busy than Valentine's Day was. And but it worked out very, very well. I even got oh, this surprised me. There were two people up front who were watching me work and do my thing, and they had me call the manager, but it turns out that they weren't actually there. They weren't there to complain to the manager. It turns out that they were telling the manager that to tell them that I was doing a good job, which made me very surprised, and I was very happy. I was like, "Oh, that's never happened to me before. That's never happened." And I was just like, it made me wanna just like blush and keep going. At that moment, like I felt reinvigorated. I felt young again. I felt a second wind. My back still hurt, you know. My body was still aching, but I felt encouraged. It felt nice. I was like, "Oh, this is amazing. It's never happened before." So I was like, "Oh, I must be doing something right." So I kept going and going and finished out the day well. It was good. It was a nice full day. And I'll get to it in a second, but it always contrasts with those days where the other person drives me. It always contrasts with the other person immediately talking down to me, being condescending and being veiled passive aggressive and insulting. Yeah, but I'll get to that in a second. But anyway, yeah, it was a good day. There is one thing that I thought about is there's someone at my work who I think is deaf. I think he is deaf, and I was surprised mainly at how easily and how quickly we were able to just like communicate with each other through basic hand gestures, just like thumbs up, pointing, basic body movements, gesturing, like really quick. Like I was surprised. I picked it up really, really fast. And I suppose looking back on it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? With with the way I've grown up, I've always been hyper attentive to other people's body language and faces they make and gestures and trying to read them at every moment to predict what unpredictable things they're gonna do next. I guess it's the kind of thing where when you live in an unpredictable environment with an unpredictable person who's yeah, you keep trying to read them ahead of time to keep yourself safe and aware of anything they try to do. And so it uh I mean it's helping now. It's helping now in this situation where I have to be able to read people's body language and understand. I mean, it seems to be helping. We are able to move around each other and understand each other. It seems pretty smoothly so far. Like not much friction there, which makes me pleased. I'm happy. I'm happy that something born out of that negativity, more that, negative side of things can be used for something more constructive, What's that thing with Jungian, the shadow, into, taking back those strengths that the shadow has, integrating those qualities that have been sort of taken over by the shadow. It has strengths in it, and I guess it's kind of like that, that even though it was born from something bad and negative, and I do have some negative association with being able to do that, I can turn it around and use it for something more constructive and functional, and it helps me out more. But yeah. Anyway, I just want to get this poison out of me at the moment, but with the other person, basically, I was sitting in the car, and basically, how would I put it? Yeah. So basically, the other person started telling me, like, coming up with all these scenarios of, like, and here's the thing. I know the other person. I know other people don't necessarily know the other person. Maybe they know the type of person that the other person is, and you might know what I'm talking about. But the other person is the kind of person who will get mildly dizzy from dehydration and then suddenly say that they are going to have a heart attack, and that they're going to need to go to the emergency room, and they'll start blaming you, and doing all kinds of stuff, and start making like a massive scene, like, you might need to call the ambulance right now. I'm going to need to go to the emergency room. I might die. I think I'm going to have a heart attack. And I think I'm having a stroke. And meanwhile, the other person just needed like a glass of water. They probably just didn't want to serve themselves, or was like mildly dizzy, or had a slight vitamin deficiency and just needed to eat. Like, and I'm not making this up. This is real. This is I'm talking from experience. Like, just had like just needed to eat something, with some salt in it, and then is all better. Or just was like mildly dizzy, or just like a slightly out of breath, and then thinks that they're gonna have like a seizure or a stroke or a heart attack, and that like suddenly they're gonna die, and starts like using all this stuff to try and get other people to do things for them. Like, that was one of like the main ways the other person would also, in addition to a lot of other ways, try and get people to do things, mainly me, to try and get me to do things. Like, I think I'm gonna die, I'm gonna pass out, oh, you may need to call the emergency room, and suddenly starts like hyperventilating like crazy. And then 5 seconds later, when something that they're interested in happens, or just like catches their attention, all of a sudden the symptoms are just gone. That would happen all the time when they would start doing like sickness, like, I'm gonna die, I may need to, and then like 5 seconds later, like, something would happen, and then like suddenly all the symptoms just kind of disappeared, just boop, gone. And then like when they needed to go back into it, they would just like start doing it all over again. That wouldn't happen every time, where suddenly something would distract them, but it happened enough to clue me in that, like, it was one of those early clues that, like, okay, this person is, okay, manipulative. One of the biggest clues was just like, what do you mean emergency? This is the most minor thing. Then meanwhile would put themselves through days of like, whatever they wanted to do, and like no sleep, no eating, blah, 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 and then would just be fine and even be like, see, I never rest. I just keep going. I work and work and work and work and work. This is what you need to do. And then, like, suddenly the next day would be like, not the next day. Not because then it seems like, oh, well, that was just their symptoms catching up with them. No, no, not the next day. Like, they would be perfectly fine after that. When I say the next day, I mean like a month later or a week later, just a minor thing. And suddenly, like, I think I'm gonna, pass out. I think I might have a heart, you might need to call an ambulance. You may need to call 911, that kind of thing. And it'd always be like, what? But, I'm in the drive again, and the other person is just like telling me about how like I got into a car accident. I could have died. Not that you would have cared, you know. Again, just throwing in more passive aggressive comments. Just like I was on this thing the other day, and this car came up, and like it almost like broadside. I could have died. I could have been killed, and I was tempted to text you while it was happening, like, hey, I may die right now, but not that you would have read your messages anyway, not that you probably would have even cared or looked at it, And the person saying this in the middle of their things, it's like, okay. But then the other person starts going into this whole thing about how, like, my job is my job is dangerous, and my life is at risk every day, and I'm always under threat, and I'm doing it for you and everyone, and I'm and starts like playing this whole self-sacrificial thing. Basically the gist of it is the person is trying to use this to try and once again try and coerce me into getting like McDonald's jobs and rush into the stuff. I don't know if I should repeat. If you heard the other ones, you probably know what I'm talking about, but trying to coerce me into trying to get to do what they want. So they started feeling like, what if I could have died? If I died on you, like, you're gonna be homeless and all this stuff, and what if I was killed, that kind of thing. Like, I could have died in a thing and you wouldn't have even cared or noticed, and all this stuff. And the other person's going through all this stuff, and I'm just like, wow, you would go to this length to try and oh, and it also reminded me of that because afterward they were saying like, oh, I dodged the other car, and afterwards I was breathing so heavy I thought I was gonna have a stroke or a heart attack, and then I was gonna have to go to the emergency room, and that's what that reminded me of. That and it was like, okay, I see. But I was just thinking to myself, like, one, this is not your job. You have a job. You have an actual job. You have a very good, cozy, corporate, remote office job that pays you a lot of money. Two, you spend like crazy on both minor and major high price items. Three, this other job you're doing, driving around and doing, I don't mean driving around in a kind of, literally driving around. I don't mean to just say, oh, you're just driving around. No, literally driving around and doing this like delivery thing. Three, that job, that is your choice. You are choosing to do that. You don't even have to do this. You are doing this to make extra money on the side. And on top of that, you are more than qualified to get a higher paying second job if you needed one. Seriously. The other person has credentials and has even signed up and nearly been accepted for remote higher paying jobs. What is going on here? Are you two playing? You know she doesn't like it when you play with her too much. She doesn't like that kitten. Come on, be nice to her. Oh, no, not my headphone, Where'd it go? Thank you. Oh. Okay, there you go. He's leaving. He's not going to play with you anymore, okay? I love you. Oh, you don't like it when I pet you. Oh, okay. Just one more pet. Okay. Anyway. But, no, the other person has every opportunity in the world to get another job that is not this job, that just has, inherent risks of driving around and being on the road. And actively chooses to reject them because the other person just wants to be able to drive around and be outside. Literally, the other person, would choose, even when they were here, to never be here. Just be out all the time. Even when the other person wasn't doing that job, they would find an excuse to leave and just go out and do, whatever they wanted. Just literally, just leave, just go. As much as they almost would have a panic attack, or would purposely downplay what everyone else was doing just to say it's not that important, right? I can leave, and then would just go. And wouldn't return for hours and hours and hours and hours. Not that I wanted the other person to come back, but, neglect is neglect. The other person would just skedaddle and leave us all here and not return, no matter what. No matter the situation, would just go. And, yeah. 5, the conditions the other person was describing are not even necessary to the job. The other person just chooses. Again, it's a job where you can choose where you specifically go. It gives you the route. It's not making you guess. The other person chooses to go into these areas where one on that. If the other person is telling the truth, which unfortunately they are not trustworthy. If they actually were, and if anything like that actually happened and they weren't just exaggerating a minor situation or trying to come up with something. If that were actually true, they have the choice. I know the job. They have the choice to not go into those areas, to not go at that specific time of day when it is most troubling, and to hold on to that. 6, it is your responsibility to take care of your own life. I'm not going to live under the threat of, what if I died? Oh, I'm sorry, but there is nothing I can really do about that. I'm doing what I can and what my estimation is for the best to be able to take care of things. And, whether you die or do not die is halfway your responsibility and partly, the world being the world that it is. But I'm not going to be coerced or rushed into a decision just because of the what if of, you saying, well, what if I died? Well, it is, of all the people who could have personal responsibility of that, it is your personal responsibility to try and make sure that that does not happen and that wouldn't happen. I can't control that, and nobody else can control that, really. Well, I'm talking within reason. Of course, if somebody jumps a stop, they're in control of that. Their decision then I'm talking about in a general sense, It is the other person trying to put that responsibility on to other people instead. Well, it's like, I feel for you if you were afraid. I get that, you have every right to feel that way and to be stressed, but also, take care of yourself. Make sure you don't die. Take precautions. I've seen the way you drive. I have seen that, you know. Yeah, take care of yourself. That is your duty. It's your responsibility to ensure that, you make it through each day. And, yeah. So, the other person basically just came up with this whole fear speech about, like, what if I died and no... Well, here's the thing, right? Like, the other person is actively trying to get me off of looking for remote jobs, looking for, that kind of looking, and also studying for a car. And I was just thinking to myself, and then I thought to myself, like, well, if you did die, if you were to die, like yesterday, right now, today, it wouldn't, like, what are you talking about? It wouldn't matter. If you were to die, well, guess what? I have now no way to... Speaking purely logistically, I don't mean to sound cold or anything like that, but again, the person's not dead. The person is creating manipulative hypotheticals and scenarios. So I'm going to treat it logistically. But, like, if you were to die, if that person were to die that day or yesterday or today, well, none of what they're saying makes any sense. Because guess what? Now I have there would be no way for me to get to work 2 out of the 3 days that I go to work. I don't have a vehicle. If I got a second job the way that the other person wants, who for some reason keeps insisting on, like, cheap ice cream shops and McDonald's, if I did that, well, if you died, what am I supposed to do then? I wouldn't be able to get there consistently, or with any reason. They're... Hold on, kitten, not right now. Hold on. I know you want to lay on me. Let me finish recording this journal first, and then you can lay on me. I love you. You can stand right next to me, though. I just need free use of my emotive hands right now. Okay. But, it just, like, if you're going to pull this manipulative scenario, this manipulative hypothetical, then let's actually start thinking about it. If that were to happen, then there is no real benefit to anything that you're saying. Nothing that you're saying actually makes sense. You're literally just creating a scenario or a hypothetical to coerce me into a decision that, if in this hypothetical you died, all of it would fall apart immediately. Because your hypothetical still hinges on you. If you're creating a hypothetical in which you die, but are self-centered enough to also still focus the hypothetical around you being the one to provide all functionality and being alive, creating this scenario that is contradicting itself by the very means that you're constructing it, you're presenting it. And anyway, I just kept thinking about that to myself. Just did I write it down here? Yeah. Other person has every choice and opportunity of job, has control over when and where they go, and their own safety. But yeah, creating this scenario in which you die, in which I would be completely unable to actually support myself. On top of being unable to support myself, unable to have the time to be able to support myself. With the way, we're all set up. But that's because it's not actually about the other person dying. It's about the other person getting me to make the decision that they want me to make. And coercing me into making that choice. The reason why it contradicts itself on the whole dying part is because there really is no consideration on the other person's part for the dying thing. It's not about really the dying thing. It's about trying to use guilt and all that to try and get someone else to do what they want. That is ultimately what that is about. But it's a performative kind of benevolence, It's a very performative kind of benevolence. They're like, I'm just trying to support, I'm just doing it all for you and supporting you, and if I died, then you'd have no one, and you would be all alone, that kind of thing. And it's like, so could you please just do these things that that kind of thing. Even though, again, no matter what, no matter how the other person frames it, they can never actually get it to line up or actually make any sense, because it's not really about making sense. It's about getting what they want out of someone else. But no matter how empathetic they try to make it sound, no matter how benevolent they try to make it sound, no matter how nice it may sound in isolation, it doesn't line up with anything else. And yeah. Oh, well, that's getting to today, I suppose. And one of the reasons I didn't upload a journal yesterday is because oh, hold on, give me just a moment. Anyway, one of the reasons I wasn't able to is because I was actually doing something really nice with that group that I had mentioned before. We were having like a story, like a narrative related session, and it went like all through the night until midnight, 1 a.m. And I wanted to record a journal yesterday, but then I saw like, there's no way. I'm too like, I'm in this now. I'm not going to be able to stop to record one. So it's like, well, all right, just save it for tomorrow, 2 days in one. But, yeah, so I had taken care of all the day's responsibilities. Well, first of all, I had gotten back from work, took a small nap, took care of some responsibilities. Then I was going to go start my journal right after I cooked. But then that started up. So I cooked, and then that was going, and then I was like, oh, it's going. And then, I was like, there's no way. There's no way this is going to be able to happen right now. So I, just held it off for today. But, oh, hello. Hello. Okay, go ahead and, yeah, you can sit on me. Go ahead. Just not on the neck. Just not on the, yeah. There you go. Right there. There you go. Get comfy. Get comfy. Mwah. Yes, I'm glad you're gaining weight. Yes. You're all plump and healthy. Not fat, just plump and healthy. Yes. You're so cute. Mwah. All right. But anyway, so, well, here's another thing I wanted to mention. I had a dream this morning. I had a dream that I got one of the remote jobs I applied for, one of the creative ones, and it was fantastic. Like, all kinds of, the other person was like, yeah, we really liked your work, and we're ready to get you started on, and then I was just like, oh, hopeful, and then, like, mixed into that were a bunch of, it was one of those sleeps where, because I was up late having some fun, my mind was just kind of racing and combining all kinds of thoughts and memories. So it was like a mix of work, my job stuff. It was a mix of, like, hoping for the future. It was a mix of ongoing events. It was a mix of a lot of negative past events, a mix of a lot of positive past. It was just like a whole, my mind was just kind of mashing together all sorts of stuff. But the last dream I had was me getting accepted into that job and making money and getting work and things getting better, and that that made me happy. But I'm thinking, but yeah, so another thing I wanted to talk about is, how should I order this? A week ago, I found a creative writing course, and it was a sign up. It's with a guy named Adam something, and he was the writer on 2018 God of War. He won an award for it at the Game Awards. He wrote several other games, and he was going to start a class on creative writing, and it was going to build portfolio pieces. It hasn't started yet, so it will, it's going to build portfolio pieces. It's going to build work. It's going to build networking. If you're in the top 10%, he'll give recommendation letters to companies. Regardless, he's going to help you build, connections to companies, give you business advice, help set you on a path to get hired. So it's one of those things that, like, pays you back afterwards because of all the skills you learned. You get the jobs, you get more money, you have the experience, you've networked, the money you'll make afterwards from getting work. And it's on your resume now, the things that you did. And if you're in the top 10%, he personally writes letters of recommendation to companies, and, like, he's really someone to, like, get a recommendation letter for. So I set an appointment, and this morning I talked to the person at the company who was setting up the class, and it was pleasant. We went through, and then, we got to the tuition part, and there's it's like $1,700 something odd dollars, and that's with discount right now. But there are payment plans where it can be split up into payment, and no interest, no, so you could split it up into, like, even up to 24 months. $1,000 divided by 24. Let me see. What is, if you use a thing called Klarna, but what is 1,700 divided by 24? Oh, let me get my calculator. 1,700 divided by 24. That would be $70 a month. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Especially for something that, like, pays you back again afterwards. And it's like a high paying type deal. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Okay, so I'll get through this first and then I'll talk about that. But high paying type deal, you know? And so I discussed something with the other person first out of necessity, and then I brought this up to their attention, the potential for this class, and before I even sent the details, I already knew, you know, one, the other person is going to be passive aggressive, act like part interest. I already know they're going to be passive aggressive. They're going to throw it back in my face. They're probably going to say no and then use it as an excuse to be like, well, maybe if you did what I wanted, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe if you just did what I said, you know, that kind of thing. And they're not really going to consider it in any way at all. They're just going to look at it, well, like a well, you know, that kind of thing, and just be like, you know, this is before I even sent the information. I already knew. And, you know, skipping ahead a bit, it did. You know, everything I thought that was going to happen did happen. The other person doesn't care, truly doesn't care about anyone but themselves and their own image. I'm not even saying this like, how dare they don't pay for something that I want. I mean just in a general sense, whether there was payment involved or not. If it took any amount of effort, non-monetary, any amount of effort to do something for someone else, didn't care at all. Complete disconnect, just total lack of empathy, attention, anything. Literally did not care, and would even find ways to guilt you into making them, not even making them, they would say you were trying to make them, trying to find ways to guilt you and to asking them to do something, you know, to asking them for help, basically. Would find ways to ultimately guilt you if they spent too long on it, you know. The only way you could get them to even help, even for 5 minutes, is if they thought that they would look bad for not doing it, you know. And the whole time, just clearly not being barely doing as little as they possibly can, just like, you know, being just mentally incapable of actually engaging with anything. It's like a whole thing. But anyway, so, you know, I will read these messages. I'll try to be vague. Recently, a work certificate. Hi, I just wanted to share something with you. Recently, a work certificate program came to my attention. It's a 6-week course in an online classroom setting, working with an award-winning creative writer as the teacher. I researched him, and he is a top talent. Its goal is to form networking and strong portfolio pieces along with potential recommendation letter by the teacher for jobs. I received details about it today, including tuition. And the person immediately responded with, "That's great. Is it free?" And, you know, I had already knew what was going to happen, but, you know, I gave it a shot. So I sent the email. It has all the details, you know. It doesn't start for like another 2 months. So, you know, a potential to set aside some money. You know, I knew the other person. I'm thinking about it like, if all of my money wasn't going into rent and I had nothing left for myself, you know, just thinking what it's a month away, set aside just a little bit here and there. Anyway, the email with all the details, including the big discount that came off of it, and the fact that there is, like, deposit plans with very, very, as I mentioned earlier, flexible plans. Very, very flexible, like, interest-free installment plans. You know, it pays itself off afterwards due to the job. You know, much higher chance of getting hired, experience. It looks really good on a resume. Anyway. So, This made me laugh when I saw it. And, with that sort of condescending smiley face. Remember, the other person knows the other person knows, the deal with money. They were the ones. Here's another thing I wanted to mention earlier. What number was I on? 6. I was completely and utterly willing to share my money with the other person, that we would live together, and that I would work, and that we would pool our money together to take care of this place, and that we would work together, and everything. And the other person, you were the one who chose to abandon. You were the one who chose to leave, because, in your words, you were threatened by someone else, by sharing financial responsibility with someone else, and that you were threatened that if the other person was able to pay for anything, that you didn't want someone having power over you and controlling you, and that you were threatened by someone else paying for the place. Because, in your words, you didn't want them getting all haughty and arrogant and thinking that they would have control over you, or that they suddenly had power or were important. You chose to leave and put yourself, and by extension us, in this situation, when there was no one threatening you, when you were threatened by the possibility, when you kept lying and saying that you wanted us to share that we were going to work together, that we were going to share financial responsibility, but you were truly lying. And the moment you realized that in any sense that someone would be sharing in what you considered to be what you use for control, and that you would have less of it, that you got scared, you got paranoid about this hierarchy you created in your mind slipping through your fingers, and that you wouldn't be able to control the other person anymore, and that they were setting boundaries with you and telling you that they couldn't take care of your responsibilities and theirs at the same time. You took all of that and openly admitted that you would, in your own words, never share power or authority with anyone, which is the mindset you were coming in with. And then you chose to leave and abandon and put yourself into this situation. No one forced you out. No one made you go. You had someone who was completely willing to work with you. And now you have chosen. You chose this. Anyway, I say all this to say, the other person knows what's going on with money. They are the person who created the entire situation with money. With the money. So, when I see the passive-aggressive smiley face, and the incredibly passive-aggressive, because again, you might be thinking to yourself, it's text, how do you know? It is because I've heard it in real life. And I know that the other person would not compromise in text to be exactly the person that they are, and never change, whether in the medium of text or spoken. Anyway, The other person asked the incredibly passive-aggressive question of, "Do you have the money for the tuition?" with the little smiley face next to it. And I, fully expecting that response, just responded with, "No, I don't believe I do." And, and the other person responded with, "Gosh, wish we did. It sounds interesting. I feel awful that my coffers are so darn empty and exhausted." And let me tell you, the other person has never used the word coffers. And only uses the word gosh when they are purposefully being passive-aggressive. Again, the other person is completely disconnected from other people. They think that they aren't passive-aggressive or sarcastic. Even when the other person has been sarcastic minutes before, they only believe that only other people can be sarcastic or passive-aggressive, and that they are physically incapable of being sarcastic or passive-aggressive. One of the reasons that they told me they thought they were incapable of being passive-aggressive and sarcastic is because, in their words, I don't know what those words even mean. The other person pulled the DW, "this sign can't stop me because I can't read." The other person literally thinks if I don't understand what something is, that means that I'm incapable of doing it. And even if you tell them that they were being sarcastic or passive-aggressive, they will tell you that you were just making it up, and that you're accusing them of being something, or that you're just projecting yourself onto them, which is, it's very ironic. It is very ironic. Anyway, the other person will speak passive-aggressively and sarcastically and be completely disconnected from the idea that anyone else could possibly, realize it or think that they are, because they themselves don't think that they are capable of doing it, despite the fact that they will literally be doing it very clearly with that intent. But of course, they think that it would look bad if they did that. So they then say that they are incapable of doing it. It's the whole self-image thing. It's really something to watch in real time. The sheer amount of just contradictions. Anyway, the other person said, "Gosh, wish we did. It sounds interesting." And that's another thing that you constantly hear from. "Wow, that sure sounds neat. That sure sounds interesting. Wow, pretty cool. Wow." That sure is something, just completely. The other person doesn't care. The other person doesn't care about anyone or really anything besides themselves, and just doing things out of obligation or trying to look good, The other person, if they could just dump everything, would. Absolutely. If the other person could just dump us here, me and the cats, they absolutely would, without a second thought, and just go and just completely leave. I was thinking about that the other day. I want to pause on something and think. The place where I work is easily accessible, affordable. Also, I know the other person has money. The other person is buying Wayfair furniture, expensive Wayfair furniture, and furbished apartments, and is lying about living in a car, and is purposely choosing to keep. I only know this because of FedEx messages. They don't know that I also get the alerts for when things are getting delivered. And of course the other person, anyway, I'll get to that in a, the place where I work, it's easily accessible. It's not even that hard to stop in. And I was thinking to myself, like, because I see it all the time, people will drop in to see my coworkers, family, I'm thinking about human behavior, and they'll drop in, they'll even come in to eat and be like, hey, could I, oh, dratch. I said it. You know what? I'm going to keep going. If you miss it, you miss it. Anyway, they come in and they come to see my coworkers, and they're like, I'm here to see this person. I wanted to check in on them. Or, could I go with that? I wanted to see, and it'll be family, it'll be friends, it'll be like, oh, I just wanted to see, and they'll come and chat and all kinds of things. And then I realized, among other things, the other person will never come here. And, I thought to myself, like, how scary would it be if the other person walked in through those doors and asked for service and things. And then I realized to myself, no, that person's never going to come here. That person is never going to see me. That person's never going to come and talk. That person's never coming here. That person will never be here. They're never going to walk through those doors. That person doesn't care. Why would I ever expect that? The person is cruel, but they're not cruel in that sense. to do that, they don't care, and they're not cruel in that sense. They don't care. They would never call or text out of obligation. They would never even, they never even would see me except completely out of obligation or saving face. If they could, they would just leave and never associate with me ever again. They already attempted that. The only thing that's keeping the other person from completely physically disassociating with me presently is the fact that the job program bus doesn't go on weekends. If it did, just like no interaction at all physically, and already just like doesn't call or text or anything. So why would the other person ever walk through those doors to talk to me or to see me? Ever. Anyway, the other people here, their family, their friends, they do that. But no, that's never going to happen for me. But anyway, I'll keep reading through. Gosh, wish we did. It sounds yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, no, it has never had any interest ever in my interest in careers, jobs, even when it was completely viable. Even right now, I'll get to that. One that literally is viable, just like no interest. Zero. Absolutely no. Not even like nil interest, negative interest, negative support, negative involvement, negative encouragement, literally. Again, would absolutely erase themselves from ever being in my association if they possibly could. Anyway, gosh, wish we did. It sounds interesting. I feel awful that my coffers are so darn empty and exhausted. Again, just being completely passive-aggressive. So I said this, and then I didn't say anything else after that. All I said, because I'm always, again, I live a life where I'm worried. I don't want to become like the other person. And I worry like, oh, I don't want to become manipulative or just like, oh, I only want you for your money and then like abandon you when nothing else, I only want you for the control and the authority it gives me to make me feel good, aggrandize myself, and then I'll just abandon you if I don't, all about me and then goodbye, But, I don't want to be someone who's like, no. And then I thought to myself, like, well, it's all in the response. Am I the kind of person who, if the other person says no, I'll try to guilt them. I'll say, I guess you don't love me, or, all kinds of stuff. And I thought to myself, like, this isn't the kind of person you should associate with or be around. This is not a person you can be like. This is not a person you can give an inch to. I learned about like gray rocking. You just have to be neutral, entirely neutral with this person. And I don't have the energy to explain it all right now, but this is not the kind of person you can give validation to, you can give to in any way. Like, even this was a risk, and the person took it, and I knew that they would do it and take it, but I wanted to at least, this was important enough, to me at least, to give it a chance for a career path. But anyway, so all I said after that was, sounds good. I'll let the person I contacted know. And that was it. I didn't say anything after that. And I figured, like, that is the good response. I don't love this person. I don't have any relationship with them. I don't personally have money. This is a chance the money to do this. This is a chance. Let's see if the other person has any sense of, like, this is opportunity. This could be a future. This could be helpful. Anything beyond their immediacy. Anything beyond immediacy or just what they want, And just, I checked, I gave it a shot. The answer is no. So I was just like, okay, well, that's it then, The answer is no. I'll move on. That's it. My response is to simply, like, humbly bow out. Just like, all right, understandable. Wanted to see if there was any, sounds good. I'll let the person I know I contacted know. But then, the other person then takes it as an opportunity. The other person takes their opportunity. So afterwards I get, so sorry, baby, with that sort of like sad, sad face with the little like downward eyes and the eyebrows, just like, And then just says, like, free is all we can afford right now. Unless you increase your work hours, we will probably not be able to add anything extra. Unfortunately, we are broke, again with the little sad face. In the red, unfortunately. Unfortunately, like, put the word unfortunately like 4 times. 3 times? 3 times in a row. Unfortunately, all of the money I make is to pay off debt that has already been incurred. None of it is profit at the moment, probably for the next year or two. That is a lie. The sheer amount of times I have heard the other person say, we're not going to be making profit for at least a year or two. None of it is profit at the moment for a year or two. The other person has been saying that line for decades now. The other person says that every single time. That line is a prelude to, I'm going to start spending money on incredibly expensive items, 3/4 of which we don't need. Or we didn't need to get this overpriced model, but I wanted the expensive one because I should get the best. That kind of thing. Or, again, this is the person who is saying this now, but is also buying furniture in the hundreds of dollars, making decisions entirely based off of hierarchy, control, and dominance, when there could have been financial stability. I'm scared of what the other person would have done with the money I was making, with the money I am making. I really am. But, this is the kind of person who will continually keep incurring debt and then make excuses for why they're not saving, for why they keep spending money on things. And then we'll bring out the line, none of it is profit at the moment, probably for the next year or two. For years in a row. And even when in those slight moments where things seem to get better because the other person just hasn't found anything to spend it on, hasn't been scrolling through Amazon just looking for, stuff to accumulate. If there's even like a break moment like that, we'll suddenly start looking for things to just spend things on. We'll start like performatively saying like we need to save or we shouldn't be buying all these things, it's not healthy, and then be the one to go out and start buying all of it over and over and over and over and indulging, and if it's cutting in one area, it's increasing spending in another area, or getting things that we have things to. Again, this is the kind of person who, when they were hot at night, instead of turning off their heating blanket and removing the 3 layers of blankets that they had on, would instead turn on the AC and drop the house into near freezing temperatures. Anyway. Then takes it as an opportunity, because I brought up a thing, obviously can't afford it, just wanted to check if there was any possibility, any chance. I know that the other person makes enough money. One, it's a lie that we are just like how it's a lie that when she gets, just like it's a lie that when the other person gets slightly winded, that they're going to have a heart attack or a stroke. Yes, we're low on money, but we're not broke, as the other person says. Like, we have a cushion, There is. And there is ample opportunity to improve the other person would not, though. The other person would not on their end change a thing. Again, as I'm going to read, the other person is going to put all of it on me to pick up. Again, the other person has always done this, taking what is their part of their responsibility and putting it on their other person to try and take up the slack and take on what is their part, in addition to what the person has to do on their own. So, anyway, the other person said, see what you can do to follow up with Brewster's, Chick-fil-A, or a McDonald's to see if you can get more hours and start making the 500 plus per week. That income, of course, would benefit you greatly and help with these kinds of things so that we can start to prosper and actually start to benefit and actually start to move forward. The irony is that as the person is saying, again, using the word we, but what the other person actually means is so that you can start doing everything yourself and that I can go. That is what the other person actually means. But of course, in the message, the other person is putting it on me to make us prosper so that we can actually start to prosper. When there are ample things that there are ample things the other person could do to already start moving toward that. And 2, we are not as, impoverished exaggeratedly as the other person is saying. So 1, it's exaggerating the situation, and then 2, making it seem like the other person is the reason we're not, in quotes, prospering, to create that guilt. Anyway. Unless you increase your work hours, we will not be able to add anything extra. See what you can do to follow up with Brewster's, Chick-fil-A, or McDonald's to see if If you can get more hours and start making the 500 plus per week, that income, of course, would benefit you greatly and help with these kinds of things. So that way we can start to prosper. So that way we can actually start to prosper and actually start to benefit and actually start to move forward. See what you could do, hun. These guys are really hiring, and I know they would love your skills and have you as part of their team, and I think you would do great. Take advantage of that and start doing what it takes to prosper. You can do it. I believe in you, and believe in yourself. All right, love you. And I know in real life, the other person would be saying this incredibly fast to try and, the other person loves to just like word bomb, like basically barrage you with something so that you can't respond, and then end with, okay, love you. And then just like try and get everyone to shut up so that they can't say anything else. I already know how this would play out if the other person was saying this out loud. But anyway, take advantage and start doing what it takes to prosper. I believe in you and believe in yourself. Again, that thing of just like, I mentioned it before where the other person tries to insinuate like, you're just scared. I know you're just not brave enough. You know, you don't believe in your. Maybe if you were just confident, and when really it's just that the other person is offering. The other person has a solution and a path forward. It's not the one the other person wants. So they're just, they'll just say like, oh, you're just scared. You know, they don't. They have no respect for the other. They have no respect for anyone else. So anything that is not their path forward means that you're scared or don't believe in yourself or you're just not confident. You know, that kind of thing. But anyway, what I wanted to say was, today, besides that creative remote job I was talking about, that seems to be moving forward, but they're still reviewing, another one of the remote jobs that I signed up for actually is moving forward. And I'm pretty sure after today, after I did this, onboarding. Hold on. But I did onboarding today and input the card information, and I think I'm good to go. Like, I think I may have found like a proper remote job, maybe. I Here's the thing, right? It pays more than McDonald's and all those other things that the other person mentioned. However, the other person, A, doesn't care, B, does not care to ask, and C, would not care in general because it is not how they wanted me to get another job or find more work. But the thing is that I have found, I am 90% sure, 99, I'll update, but I am 99% sure that I have found a remote job with flexible hours that does in fact pay more than the minimum wage restaurant jobs that the other person keeps trying to coerce me to go into. The problem is that the other person can't see any effort outside of it being in relation to them. They think that nothing can really happen outside of them allowing or deeming it so or anything like that. That's partly why it bothers the other person when I don't tell them what they are doing, because one, it slips things out of their control, and two, it wasn't their idea. If you know what I mean. they can't say that it was they're able to take credit for it and responsibility for it, or something like that. Words surrounding that. Um, I want to wrap this journal really quick, so I'm gonna speed up just a little bit because my one very good friend wants to do something with me, so I'm gonna do that. But yes, so the other person really, really, and I mean really, can't imagine. Again, it's the contradictory of like performatively saying like you need to be independent, do things on your own, and then contradictorily saying, you need to do this thing that I want for the good of us, and then contradictorily thinking that like nothing happens outside of them, and then everything happens through and because of them, and the other person legitimately cannot imagine that I would be working towards things on my own, coming up with my own solutions, own path, own work, own jobs, and really does actively spite anything that is not the idea that they came up with, whether passive aggressive or just poorly thought out or otherwise. The fact that it is not the path that they wanted, or keep trying. It's not the fact that it's a good idea or not a good idea. It's the fact that it was their idea and you're not going with it. That is, to them, genuinely a problem in their eyes. And so we'll keep coming up with reasons to keep trying to push it. But, yeah, so I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure, And what I was talking about earlier is mandatorily I had to put in like the card information to get payment, and the other person is the one who gets like the code for the verification. So I was like, could you send me the code? And immediately tried to insinuate that the thing is a scam. Again, I did all my research. I went through the whole thing. It is a legitimate remote business. There's, review independent, not just on their website. I did my research. It is certified, but immediately went into like this could be a scam and things like that. And went into ways to trying to put it down and imply endangerment and things like that. But anyway, I'm sorry. I apologize. I wanted to talk more about fun ideas today. And you know what? I will tomorrow. I put myself in this situation, just going out on a limb for the hope that possibly I could get this career opportunity potentially with that class. I mean, I wasn't really expecting it, and I'm going to have to talk to the guy tomorrow at 1:30. I scheduled a follow-up, and I'm going to have to tell him, I can't afford it. I can't afford it. It's just not going to happen. I'm going to miss out on, I'm going to miss out on it. I already accepted it. I'm not going to be able to get into this course, get this networking that I was hoping for. And I don't think that, even with this remote job, it's paying more. What's up with you? What's up? Well, what's that you got in your mouth? Oh, no. That's my hairband. You can't, no. There you go. Okay, thank you. Ugh, she will tear that up if she gets the chance. Like a little chew toy. But, anyway. Even... What's funny is that, even though this remote job has a lot of hours and pays more, even though this remote job has a lot of hours and pays more than any of the jobs that the other person was trying to coerce me into or recommend, it's still I still don't think it's going to be enough for clear independent. I'm in a place where it's fortunately low enough rent, lower than the average. That is the one saving grace. But the thing is that every year they do end up punching it up. Had this been a year ago, the money I make from the job I go to now would actually be enough to pay for the rent on this place. It would be. But it went up like about like $130, $150, something like that, and that like I make about 700 and it's about 8 yeah, about 130, $150 increase. And that bumped me right out, and I am worried about any more potential increases, but I don't necessarily feel secure in this, even with this remote job, which will essentially, give me the ability to take up the rest of the time I need to work and make more money and, do things like that. I still don't know if it is going to properly be enough. I still need to find, all I'm saying is that I really hope that other remote job that is creatively oriented, I really hope that dream comes true that I had this morning. I really do. I really hope that it comes true and that I am afforded that opportunity and that I get work out of that, because I want to be... I'm free in terms of physical presence, but I really want to be free the rest of the way. The thing is like, what else would help is that was one thing that made me blush and kind of happy is when those people at my work complimented me to the manager as they were leaving. They were saying like, you should get a raise, and I was just like, you really think so? It lit up my heart. I'm at $12 an hour. $12 an hour for not the most impressive amount of time, but it's the best I can get at the moment. $12 an hour over 3 days, and if it was even like $15 an hour or higher, a miracle, higher. But if it was even $15 an hour, but I make $12 an hour, it is not a very high-paying job. So, like, if I could get, a remote high-paying job and, like, a proper high-paying job, high pay is what I mean. I could go for some high pay. It's a whole combination of things. It's a combination of $12 an hour. It's hoping for work, just looking for opportunities, not being able to do others. The stress of having to be attached to this person still, and also having to balance, patience, longevity, stability, making the right calls and decisions, not being coerced or emotionally manipulated, and making the right decisions, and being patient and enduring, not getting manipulated. It's a whole bevy of things. Okay. It's a whole bevy of things, and yeah. I think I'm going to end up drawing with my one very good friend over computer. So, I think I have a plan for the thumbnail for this one. I've got to go pretty much right now, but I also pretty much said everything I wanted to say and got everything out that I wanted to get out. So, yeah, tomorrow, now that I've got this out of the way, I mean, I fueled all this ammunition myself. I'll say it again. Like, I brought this on myself. That I wasn't able to talk about something more fun today. Something more journey focused, more log focused, but, you know, I'll get to that tomorrow. And it'll be good, you know? Alright, that's it.